Welcome to Leading Minds Revealed, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on how today's top leaders harness the power of mindfulness to conquer the fast-paced, ever-changing world of business. In each episode, we sit down with C-suite executives and leaders who share their strategies for navigating rapid change with skill and clarity. Join us as we uncover the transformative mindsets that drive extraordinary leadership. These insights aren't found in business books, and they'll revolutionize the way you lead. And now, here's your host, Michael Apollo.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Leading Minds Revealed. In this episode, we're exploring the intersection between workplace culture, personal growth, and performance, especially inside industries where transformation is happening fast. My guest today is Chief People Officer at WIS, a progressive accounting firm reimagining what it means to support human potential while growing high-performing teams. With a background in hospitality, a passion for people, and a sharp strategic lens, she's designing a new kind of workplace, one where employees are valued not just for what they do, but for who they are. From mindfulness with accountants to integrating performance with compassion, she brings honesty, humor, and heart to her leadership. I'm thrilled to have her on the show. Please welcome Lauren Dunn. Welcome, Lauren.
Michael, thank you. That is the nicest introduction of me I've ever heard. I really appreciate that. I think I might record that and listen to it when I wake up in the morning to set my mindset for the day after that. It was great. Thank you.
Please do. Well, now we'll have this in the episode, so you can just listen to it. And you know what? I think after our call, all of that is just so resonant, and I really enjoyed our chat that we had recently. And you described WIS in this conversation as a place, and I found this really interesting. You know, it's not your typical accounting firm, right? And you know, we all have a bit of an image of what that is. We have an accounting firm that we work with, which I absolutely love. I love the people there. But, you know, looking at WIS and the work that you've been doing, you've shared that it's a company rooted in change. There's a lot of change happening right now. You've been at the center of that evolution. So maybe you could just start off with what drew you originally to WIS, and how has your role and the culture transformed since you've joined?
Yeah. Great question. So about 4.5, almost 5 years ago now, I was recruited by a lead partner at WIS, Mr. Kevin Kurtz. I happened to work with him at my previous place of employment. And he said, you have to meet the leadership here at WIS. We have this role opening. It's an HR, position, but it's going to change and it's going to morph, and there's going to be a lot of evolving items with it. So, be open. And I believe after I spoke with Kevin, the first person I met with was Amanda Dominguez, who's now our Chief Operating Officer. And it was like the books that we've read, our mindset, everything we talked about was just so aligned. And I had mostly worked in, I would say, male-dominated industries up to that point. And so having this strong female who was so aligned with what we were both after in a workplace and what we wanted for people in a workplace just blew my mind. Meeting the next two sets of leadership, Paul Peterson and Jim Duffy, very similar reaction. Like, I can't believe I just met these people. This is going to be great. But at the same time, you're absolutely right in that ever since there's just been change. And the one thing we know about in WIS is that what we're doing today may not be the same thing we're doing tomorrow. So we have to be open to that. We're very lucky that the size of our company allows us to make those pivots very quickly. We're just over 300 people. We're largely based out of our headquarters in Florham Park, New Jersey. Even folks that are based out of our New York and Flemington offices still come to HQ very much. So we're all a very in-person firm. And I think that allows us to just stay on the same page as well. So it's been a great 4.5, 5 years. And again, I think for WIS being transformative, yes, but that's the world we live in now, right? Every day there's a new technology, there's change in our economy, there's change in the world. And so how do you pivot and be open to that? I think we were talking in our last conversation just about resiliency. And I think that's a big piece of it too, is being open, but then know that you can change, know that you can make those pivots and those movements. So we've sort of been designed like that now over the years. I think we're all used to it, which is great. So
It's so great there. I mean, there's a lot that we can explore there. But something that stood out for me is, I mean, you're right. Right now is a time of massive transformation and change, and I think that's been a common thread through many of the amazing guests that I've been lucky to host. Here is that it's just par for the course right now. You have to embrace this reality that change is happening nonstop. It's also a principle that's been around for thousands of years that change is the only thing that's inevitable. And I'm wondering, in this industry, in this reality of where there is so much change within all organizations, but let's just say, right now with WIS, why is that why is that alignment and also the female leadership, why is that so important? Why was that important for you? And how is that helpful during this time?
oh, listen, I interviewed with WIS 6 months pregnant with my second son. And so to be able to speak with Amanda, our COO, about what is it like to have two children 18 months apart. She has two of very similar timeline, two girls. I have two boys. She just had a third last year. And just to know that she understood everything I was going through. She understood, you know, sometimes the difficulties in being the main parent figure, but also having a high pressure, high profile position and high pressure, high profile, but also we put that on ourselves, right? We want to do great work and we want to show up for our people, but we also need to show up for our families. So I think just having that conversation with her off the bat and that personal connection, it's funny. I was just having this conversation yesterday. It's one thing to know the people you work with on a professional level. When you really understand them as a human being, what they come home to, what they go home with, and what other things are happening in their life, you care more. Right? You just do, especially if you like them as a colleague, but also as a person. And with Amanda, it was so easy. And we still have that relationship today. I call her my boss and my mentor, but she's my peer and she's my friend. And I think that's where the magic lies is that when you know somebody like that, even if we have differences in opinion, which do happen at times, right? I'm not there to just be a yes person and tell her what she wants to hear. But that balancing act of, I know where she's probably going to come from on this issue. And whether it's me agreeing with her or not, I know how to navigate that. And I think same for me. So it just creates a very easy relationship. And we do have a mentorship program at WIS where we do try to inspire that same thing. So not just mentoring in the sense of, two professionals, but get to know them, get to know what their other personal aspirations are, maybe outside of work, because I think it allows you to be a better coach and a better leader. So,
There's a lot of talk around trust and safety being a real cornerstone of high performing organizations, teams. And there's this emerging research that's been around for a little while right now, how collective intelligence is another thing. Like, how do you bring out the potential of a team? And one of those key aspects is diversity, having representation, especially female representation on teams, and how valuable that is in enhancing the collective wisdom that comes out in the work that you do. So, like, how does that translate, even for you, the having that strong relationship, having that a person who understands, a leader who understands you, in this time of change that's happening, like with the change, those difficult conversations, that's one thing you were saying, but maybe even how to stay resilient, how to pivot. How could that impact, the workforce, or how have you seen that impact the workforce having, that leadership present?
listen, we're very blessed that not only Amanda, but the rest of the leadership team, as well as the partnership, has been really focused on ensuring that the partnership reflects the organization. So you've seen more and more female partners be promoted over the last couple of years, which is incredible. More and more female leaders in the organization. And yes, we do practice diverse, hiring practices, even when I started, we were largely in the tri-state area recruiting for the workforce, mostly just due to our size and sort of where we were located. But with time and with additions to my team, we've been able to really branch out and affect a lot of different universities. So we're super lucky that we see that diverseness of our population. And again, you want to see people like you in those positions because it makes you feel, to use your words before, trust and security. Okay, this is a place that I can grow. This is the place, or I could see myself, growing into that space. So I think that's really important. And listen, at the end of the day, we all want to go to a place where we like each other, right? You don't always have to, but you do want to have a population that gets along. And I think when you hire that way and you promote that way, and not because they're a female or because they're of a certain background or ethnicity, but because they've earned it and because they deserve it, it only helps that synergy. I think a lot of times we think about performance as this grind, right? We got to put in the metrics and we got to pound the pavement and it's grit and push, right? But some of it is just flow, right? It's if you really have synergy with the people you're working with, that flow state should almost have. It's like, and we were talking about yoga a little bit last time we met too, but same thing in yoga, right? It's not a force. You can't force yourself into these things. That's not the point. The point is to ease in and find those like slight nuances and those slight tweaks, those little changes, right? So if you approach it in that manner, I think it's that much easier than being rigid. So yeah, hopefully we're bringing all the right dynamic personalities together and creating that flow state. I think that's always been what I've been after in the performance space, at least.
Yeah, it's at a time where diversity, is a hot topic around, and think even a bit sort of demonized right now in terms of how it's approached. But when you look at it from a strategic perspective, when you look at it from the perspective where, what is an organization at the base foundation of it? It's really a group of people organizing together for a common goal and outcome. And so if you're not focusing on, well, who are the people that we're attracting and do they feel secure? Do they feel a sense of trust? Do they feel the sense of representation? Yeah, definitely. Do they have the skill set and is everybody have a learning mentality to be able to gain and to grow in there? Fantastic. When you bring all of that together, that enhances the performance potential. It's not something that actually diminishes it. And I think it's so important that that message is shared. And so it's really great to hear how that's being fostered. And you were talking about resilience and fostering that in the culture at WIS. And so, like, what does resilience mean to you? And when you sort of think about it, is resilience maybe for yourself as a leader, and also resilience for the organization? Dealing with this massive change and growth and adaptation that you're all moving through.
It's funny because we spoke a little bit about this before too, but so when I think of resilience right now, my children come first to mind because we had a big move a year ago. We moved from northern New Jersey up to Concord, Massachusetts. Very different lifestyle here, and they just dove in and like absorbed everything. To see them literally not skip a beat and just be thriving, like that picture of them over this past year, like that for me is the definition of resilience. When I think of how they did that, right? And how you do that at ages 4 and not even 6, I think of mindfulness and I think of being present, right? Being present in this moment. And what is this telling me to do? I drop them off at camp in the morning. I could sit in the line of cars and circle around. Bye, guys, get out of the car, right? What do I choose to do? I choose to be present. We park the car and we take a 2-block walk to camp so I can drop them off in person and bring them to their camp and say goodbye. But it gives me those 2 blocks too to walk with my kids to and from the car. That is so important, and that has been an amazing change of mindset even for me coming out of, a busier place in New Jersey versus where we are now. But I think that same mindfulness when you get an email that maybe you didn't like the tone or you took something from the tone, but say, "What is that? Let me pick up the phone and call this person first. Okay, here's a transformation or a change that maybe I don't know enough about, or maybe I don't personally agree with. They didn't pick the tool that I like, this or that," right? Before we react, we stay mindful, we assess what is the situation, and then we make choices. And I think in human resources and people ops, you have to do that because everything that crosses your desk to someone may be a crisis. But my dad always used to say, on a scale of 1 to 10, like, where's the pain, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a deal is this? So I still do that every single moment, every item that comes across the desk. How big of a deal is the scale of 1 to 10? And then what are the pieces of the process I need to put together? I think with change, there's such an ability for us to just react all the time. And that's not necessarily to me, what resilience is. Resilience is taking that change, being mindful, understanding it, and decreasing those waves, right? You want to, I think, design a life, design a workplace where the waves are just sort of one at a time, nice and easy, right? Easier to surf, easier to swim in light waves versus these big choppy waves, right? So, how do we do that? And I think mindfulness is a big part of that, at least to me and my resiliency for sure.
Yeah, that's really it's so incredible how much we can learn from these simple moments within our lives, observing children how they embrace or completely reject change, right? And because it either goes one way or it goes a complete other way, where there could be a deep resistance to it, could be deep, strong emotions against something, and that resistance can create a ton of suffering. If you look at, like you were saying, like having a child, how do they embrace these moments and not miss a step? It's usually a lot of these principles of acceptance, openness to what's coming our way, curiosity about what's happening right now in this moment, and then taking that in stride and maintaining that. And that really changes our idea that resilience isn't something that we sort of think of and maybe we do for a little while. It's an ongoing practice. I think that mindfulness can really support, like as you shared. And how do we craft an environment, an organization that can help us do that? It's something that you share. Like we have these waves. I think, and sort of a common phrase in mindfulness is that you can't change the waves of change in this context, but you can learn how to surf them, right? And sometimes we're going to fall off, and sometimes it's not going to go the way that we want it to go. But sometimes, we can maximize our chances to get into that flow by practicing repeatedly and creating ways that we can support ourselves to do that within the organization. And I heard one of your guiding philosophies is around OIS was, why does an accounting firm have to be a crappy place to work? And so how could you change that? So what are some of the ways that you support, the culture to manage those waves, manage some of that change?
So many ways. I think first is flexibility. We started off talking about, that importance of that personal connection and the need for someone to understand what's happening in your life in addition to your work. So, knowing that we have, oh my gosh, so many first time parents over the last 2 years, it's been baby mania at West. So, how do we support them in a better parental leave policy on both sides? More flexible return to work as they sort of navigate what work with a new baby looks like, right? Because that's a very pivotal time that I think we forget about. We say, okay, leave is over, now you come back. Oh, let's ease it in. So we do sort of a 4-day work week where they get to choose a day off that is should be off and it's paid in full. But whatever day that is for them, that they're not lugging all of the things that you need as a new mom to the office, or maybe it's a day that the father can participate and pick up or drop off with the child or just spend time. So that's been super great. We talked a little bit about diversity before and that it's maybe being demonized a bit. We've leaned into it more on the employee resource group narrative. So we do have a parental support group as well that gets together. I think the meeting's actually happening shortly, if not right now. And so things that will come out of that support group will aid in as well. We're adding a new child care benefit this year, helping to supplement some child care because we certainly know that the US doesn't do enough on the federal care piece nor on the FSA reimbursement. I think it is going up though, so that should be nice. But largely talking about parents here, but all over the board, what is that flexibility? Are you studying for the CPA exam and you need a little bit of extra time and support and mentorship to be able to complete that certificate or CMA or EA, whatever those, certifications are? We help support that study through reimbursement. We help with tuition reimbursement. So again, understanding who the person is, where they are in their life, and how we can wrap our services, benefits, and programs around them to make them the most successful. That's super important. And just in general, I think the culture at WIS, because they feel supported, whether it's a new parent or a student finishing their 150 credits, that rule is probably going away soon. So that's helpful. But whatever those elements are, to our point earlier, they feel safe. And it's a place they want to come. And it's a place they want to perform. So we mentioned it a little bit in our last conversation, but like which comes first, the performance or the culture? And it sounds backwards, but really the culture has to be there first because the performance on its own won't stand up if the culture isn't there and the people aren't there believing, to your point earlier, in the organization, right? This group of people that's here together, hopefully rowing the boat in the same direction to do whatever the thing is, right? For us, it's accounting. Some people, it's making widgets, right? Just whatever that thing is that you're going to do. But that culture has to be there or the performance won't last. It will be short-lived. So that's what I believe anyway.
That's exactly the next question that was coming up for me is, it seems like there's how do we accommodate? How do we support having these, how do we create representation where people feel a sense of connection and synergy and that ability that openness to speak up and to say the difficult things, right? It's interesting. It's counterintuitive if you have sort of this grind culture and that's maybe fostered by fear. The research is even showing this as well, that you're going to have a lower likelihood that people are going to say what needs to be said, especially the things that people don't want to hear, right? So it could be a bit counterintuitive. Like, wow, if we actually take care and create a culture where people feel that sense of security, that sense of trust, it'll actually help them say the more difficult things that need to be said. I think right now, when we're at a time where things are changing so rapidly, and if we don't hear from many different voices, that maybe this client things aren't working out, or this piece of technology is failing in this way, or then we're gonna miss the ball, right? And because I think how fast everything's going. But on the other side, we got this performance reality, right? And so, fostering a lot of these offerings and a foundational culture at WIS that's supportive. How do you introduce the performance element that still balances this reality? How does that come into the conversation?
Great question, because that's literally where we are in the organization, like right now. We've been really lucky to hire an amazing CIO who's brought together a technology and transformation team over the last 2 years. And so it's been a large push on data. Where's the data? Where is our information? And not presenting it to our accountants with charge hour requirements, which most accounting firms do, which is why it tends to be not a great place to work, right? You're kind of getting ground down during the busy seasons, like again, those high waves, and then all of a sudden it's gone, and then we get crushed again, right? And how much are we have to work and grind it out. For us, it's an awareness. Here's what we expect of you from a charge hour standpoint. Here's what we expect from a PTO standpoint. We have flexible PTO. We can get into that conversation another day, but most people, what is that? Flexible PTO, is that unlimited? No, it's not unlimited, but it's flexible, meaning you can kind of take advantage of it as you need. But sure, are there people that might take advantage? Potentially. So we want to just show them, hey, here's what you've taken thus far. Here's maybe what the other people in your organization have taken or your department have taken thus far. What do you think about that? Right? Here's your charge hour targets compared to some other people in your department across, a couple different spectrums. What do you think about that? Where's your CPE? Where's your education? So again, it's not just charge hours. It's because here's the other flip on flexible PTO. And I know people argue this. Well, it's flexible PTO, but people then don't know what to take, so they don't take enough. And we looked at the data, and there's a department that I'm very worried about because they haven't taken much vacation this year, and it's July 24th. So you guys need to slow down and take a breath, right? So we can come at it in that way too. It's not just, oh, tisk tisk, you took too much PTO. It's, hey, are you taking enough time off? Are you working too much, right? Not just, did you hit your charge hours? Is there an issue maybe with your scheduling? Is something else going on that you're not hitting those? Where are you with your CPE? How is your education going? So, I think in my opinion, it's treating people like adults, right? We get a report card in school. Here's how you're doing in your studies. It's just a report card. Here's how we're doing now at WES. And I think opening up that awareness through that data lens allows us to then say, okay, here's the bar, right? Here's the game. We want to win, right? We're all here. We all like each other, right? We know what everybody's after. We want to win. So what's that next level? And then I think that is where you drive that performance. So we're just starting to roll some of these dashboards out to our people and having some of these conversations because again, it is a change from where we were before. And we don't want to affect that culture with the change, but we do know it's important to set those expectations and to allow the performer to really win and earn because you're always going to have people, whether you like it or not, that maybe aren't performing and maybe are riding a little bit on the tails of the performer. And it's our job at WIS to protect the performer. And that's really what this is going to do. So long-winded, and there'll be a lot more sort of on the back of a lot of this, performance initiatives here. And really that's where I spend most of my time now is how do we wrap more development programs around, setting these expectations and doing it in the right way. It's all about the communication and making sure that people sort of understand what it is that we're asking of them. A failed thesis would be having a bunch of people in a place not knowing what it is that their expectations, what they're up against. So providing that transparency and frameworks for people to understand, I think is a good thing. So
Yeah, that's great. I'd love to continue and hear how that goes. Definitely. And it's interesting because it seems like there is this deep sense of humanity. Like, how do we help support and create a culture, a very supportive culture, an open culture? And it seems like, like you said, that the performance comes from a foundation of a really strong culture. That culture needs to be cultivated first, and then the performance is almost like it's a natural next step. It's a natural evolution that comes from that. Here, I love the take that you're taking to this on that it's focusing on just building an awareness and a transparency and a clarity around expectations and also reflection on, well, how are things going? And then having an ongoing conversation around that. Right here, you're working with, not against the people that you work with, right? The people that you lead, the teams. And here, and it's such a it just makes sense, from, a mindfulness standpoint. Really, the way that we look at it from a research perspective, it's a foundational capacity that helps us to really optimize so many aspects of our lives. And what is that? It's really seeing clearly the way things are. And so here, if you share that with your teams, and this is why it's so important to have those difficult conversations. It's so important to provide clear direction, even if it's difficult, right? And I think that's part of what's maybe missed sometimes is, yeah, something could be a really challenging conversation, or it could be a challenging part of our culture as an organization. We might be scared to enter into that or to lean into it, but that's actually part of being mindful. It's part of that awareness, and it's part of the work that's required, I think, in leadership. And I think that's exactly what you're exemplifying. And I love that. And so it seems like this understanding people and really focusing on humanity and supporting them, it seems like that's just like a core aspect of who you are. And I know you shared a story back in your day of mentoring an employee, and how you saw their lives change and you gave them that opportunity. I was wondering if you could share that story here and share how maybe that experience influences how you lead today.
Yes. So I started my career largely in restaurants and hospitality, what I like to call the greatest stage of human behavior. You get to just witness and observe people in so many different capacities, right? We go to restaurants for celebrations, we go to restaurants for funerals, we go for any day, sometimes just for no reason at all. So I think I was drawn to restaurants. I'm a big foodie, so I love food and wine, but also just for the people. And when you work in restaurants, there's no shortage of stories in the front of the house, but certainly when you get behind the curtain with restaurant staff, both front and back of house, no shortage of stories there either, because everyone, in a lot of cases, people aren't doing or aren't working in hospitality and culinary for a full career. It may be a pivotal time. It may be supporting artists. I worked in LA and New York City, and so it was a lot of starving dancers, actors, singers want to be something else, but I do this because. And so you have to be respectful and respective of that and where they are in their life, but also of the people that are making this a career. And so I was lucky enough to work for an organization in New Jersey that said, we want you to hire everybody. So everybody that comes through, you're going to meet every single one. They get your sign off. You're going to orientate them and get them to the store. So I would be hiring anywhere from 15 to 20 people a week, interviewing all week and getting them onboarded into the restaurants. And so you meet, again, a lot of different people in a lot of different places in their lives. And one gentleman specifically, I recall, figured out a way to get to the interview. Didn't have a lot of public transportation around the office, and so his last couple bucks for an Uber or however he figured it out, he got there, and he shared with me a story later after he was hired that he didn't have a place to live, and he was actually living in a shed, sleeping next to a lawnmower, and he was quite good in the back of the house and in culinary, and we saw a lot of potential in him. And I just said, "Listen, like you can do this, and you can have a career here. Like you can become a sous chef, and like we have these programs. We created myself with a lot of the people that work there. We had some culinary programming and some front of the house programming to really train and develop our leaders. And so he went through that program and he became a sous chef. And I watched him, change his life. And that was so powerful to me. And it wasn't just me, right? Like I take a lot of ownership in that I was there and I got to witness it. But certainly there were many people that believed in him. And I think for whatever reason, as soon as you feel that goodness that you get out of somebody else's success, less my own, like it's still how I operate today with anybody that I work with. It's just the best feeling to see somebody and enjoy what they're doing too, like, not just become successful, but really enjoy and embrace what he was doing there at the restaurants. And so, yeah, I think that just kind of forever has been my thing. Like, how do I see the potential in somebody before they do? And what is it that I need to say to them, provide to them, give to them, to be able to recognize it themselves? Because when you see that they look in the mirror at themselves differently than they did before, it's just it's just an incredible experience. I wish I knew why I enjoyed it so much. I don't, I couldn't tell you that. But yeah, it's what keeps me going. It's what really is my purpose.
Yeah, I think it's there's so much empathy that comes from that. I think seeing a person's journey and really understanding their story and taking the moment to really see them for who they are and to take that time and then to follow their journey and to see that unfold. I think that can bring out just like the best of us to really be supportive. And I think that comes in. You could see that in how you're approaching your thinking around fostering the culture at WIS. And so, WIS right now is adapting to automation and AI fast. And at the same time, you're managing a large transformation internally. And so, what have you learned about helping people embrace change and that fear that can come along with it, especially during this time? Because I think this is on a lot of people's minds. I was speaking to Andy Krupelski, he's the former president of Sprint Mobile, and it's a telecommunication company that was taken over, but it was pretty big at one point. And we were talking about how there's like AI anxiety, right, and AI depression happening right now. I think there's this sense that, technology is going to take over all our jobs and all that when, we're realizing not so much. If anything, it's going to amplify our abilities. And for some, that some roles that's going to change, just like with all technology. But yeah, how do you support? Like, what have you learned about helping people through this time?
I think to your point, it's trying to ensure that that fear doesn't exist. And the only way that we can do that is to communicate and be open and honest and transparent about what are the tools that we're using and how we're using them, and frankly, providing education on them as well. You have heard it, in a couple different areas in the organization, or how is this going to affect my job, and am I not going to have a job? AI is going to replace me. My response to that always is sort of exactly what you just said. Like it can't, because the P2P interaction between clients and accountants and our operators, that's never going to go away. So we still need that human touch. We still need that, but you still need somebody to prompt the AI, right? You still need somebody to review what's happening with it. It still needs to be your voice if they're helping you write the email, right? That they get close. They really do. Some of these apps and services are really something. But again, I agree. I think it just amplifies what we do, and it makes us better if we're using it in the right way. And we were very lucky. Again, our transformation and technology team has been wonderful, ensuring that there's been a lot of communication and education around the tools that we're embracing as an organization, and then what we're putting out to our clients. And we are trying to showcase to our clients as well that you don't have to be afraid, because we're going to be the experts on it, and we're going to teach you what we're using, and we're going to show you how this is going to provide you a better product. And if embracing the technology, making sure we're applying it in the right way for both internal and the clients, how can you be scared of that? Right. But you got to lean in, and you got to be able to talk about it, because you're right. That the anxiety, it's there. It's real. But we were scared of the internet too. Remember? Like when it was dial-ups, and we're not going to put any information on the internet. Oh, we're not going to. I pay with things with my phone now. I don't even need to carry a pocketbook anymore. It's unbelievable. And the things you put your information now, I mean, I don't know. So that's a whole story for another day. But yeah, I think just open, honest, transparent communication. What is to be scared of with that?
And with this, I think where the biggest risk in this time of AI adoption, massive technological change, lies is for those of us whom are resistant to change and have deep difficulty embracing new things and creating new habits. And that's a lot of us. And for some of us is in certain domains, and others it's all encompassing. And when you think about mental health challenges as well, that amplifies that ability. And this is why it's so important, I think, to take care of ourselves, but then also to develop these skills and abilities that help us be open, help us stay curious, and help us ride those waves. Because those mindsets, for those of us who embrace those mindsets, we're going to be able to ride these waves of change more effectively, more efficiently, and work more effectively and efficiently with others. And I think what you said, that communication is so key, and learning how to adopt these AI technologies, how to embrace various different ones of them, and how to experiment with them and to see how they can help us. I think that's really, really, really key. I'm curious, are there, where does learning and development come into place? Do you offer any training specifically around cultivating this type of mindset to embrace change, to understand the impact that this has on us, how that can affect teams? Is that something that plays a role in this, or or how can that play a role within organizations?
Yeah, so we very lucky. The learning and development organization sits under my purview in people ops. It is a large undertaking. We have quite a few talented individuals that get to work in that space. But in addition to our, continuing professional development, for the accountants or whatever practice area that you're in, we do wrap a lot of other programs around them as well. So we've worked with some external consultants in the DEI space Specifically, though, DEI through mindfulness and through effective communication strategy. So not sort of that predetermined, like you must take these DEI trainings to figure out how to talk to somebody that's not like you. That's not really the point. We get on a call, we come to our breath, we meditate. There may be a story or, an intention for the day. And then we may go through some definitions or items or, whether it's inclusivity or unconscious bias, things like that. But we're trying to come at it from, I know you're different than me. I know you didn't grow up the way I grew up. I know that there's no way we can have the same story. There's no way, right? We're all individual by the hands of whoever you believe created you, right? And so, how do I know and address that and talk to you in a way that's comfortable for you and me? So I think that it's been super helpful to see after so many years of preaching wellness and mindfulness in the workplace to see 60 plus people on a call, meditating at WIS was literally like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something right. Like, this is great. So we have programs like that. I do bring in a lot of what I call my gurus. So whether it be, my old yoga teachers or community members that I know are doing great work in the Morristown, Madison, Florham Park community, just to share their best practices on mindfulness, I think is really important. I always say if something's worked for me or I've tried it and think it could work for somebody else, I want to make it available to them. So we have a lot of folks in the community that we bring in, work with, and bring to our people, which is great. And yeah, we definitely have some mental health programming, throughout the year. We use an employee assistance program through Magellan Health, who's been wonderful when it comes to coming out to our space and doing some training. And it's not just, specific to mental health, but how to lead different types of personalities, how to lead folks of different generations. So we do try to bring just learning in every capacity. Because again, to your point of riding the waves, like that more training, that repetition, that education will help you do that. And it's critical, I think, to the resilience that we spoke of earlier and being able to embrace change is to be a learning organization, to be able to embrace these new technologies and AI and all the things that are coming at us. If we can be open and curious to learn about them, it's going to be easier to adopt them. So it all works together.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see as well as WIS is starting to embrace is really exploring the performance aspect of the culture growth, um, how that program that can even evolve to support those elements. And so, coming near time here and I think I could just keep on going here, but if we were to boil things down for a leader who wants to build a culture that supports both well-being and performance, where would you say they should begin?
Great question. So I was really lucky to find WIS. And I'd said throughout my career, the hardest thing to affect and build is that culture. And when I got to WIS, it was already here. And it was already here through the leaders that were diligent through the time in their organization and watched all of those changes and had that resiliency and were able to figure out what is it that we want this culture to be. And it's so fascinating because for years now, I've been trying to put the words to it, right? Every company, we have to have our mission and we have to have our core values and we have to have our vision statement, right? Because the business books tell you that's what you have to have. I will tell you, we still haven't found the words for those things. But for some reason, we don't need it because we're still marching to the same beat and that culture is still there. But it's hard to put it into words. You have to see it. You have to feel it. You have to go there. Go to Florham Park HQ and you'll feel it for sure. That's why I love to go down there. I was so sad to move further away. I try to get down there as much as I can. But I think for someone who's trying to create that culture, you do need to say what it is that we want to do here, right? The closest thing we have is we want this accounting firm not to be a crappy place to work. So maybe defining what those crappy things are in other businesses allow us to say, okay, so this is what we want because we know this is what we don't, right? It's like dating a little bit, right? So I got to try these shoes on and those shoes on. Those one hurt a little bit. These ones are a little. So how do you figure out what shoe is going to fit? And so if you're going to build an organization, you want to identify the culture and you don't really know how to put pen to paper on it, look at the ones that you maybe don't want to emulate. I think that's a great place to start because we all know where we didn't like to work. Sometimes it's hard to define spaces like this for sure. And then, yeah, I think too, in HR and people, there's a very fine balance between taking care of the organization, but always doing what's in the best interest for the employee. And I think that's that fine line that you always have to ride is like, yes, we're a business. We have to make money. We have to be profitable, but we also need to care about those people. And if the people first part can influence that profitability, I think that's the key.
Lovely. Yeah. So yeah, what I was hearing there is having the conversations about the culture that you want to have, and that could start by just exploring what do we don't want to emulate, and within our culture, within our team, within our organization, our departments, and then as well, yeah, just really exploring that focus on humanity, that people first centric viewpoint, which I think you've really emulated. You've really conveyed the importance and the value of what that could look like. And so, thank you so much, Lauren. And so, finally, where can people go to learn more about WIS or to connect with you?
Oh, absolutely. So you can visit our website at wis.com, and you can find me, of course, on LinkedIn, probably the best way to message. Happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to put your LinkedIn handle into the description of the episode, as well as the link to WIS. If anybody's interested, check out the amazing culture over there. I love what's happening. Lauren, thank you so much. Your energy, creativity, candor is I can just feel it. And so, thank you so much for bringing this here to us. I know our listeners are just going to walk away inspired to rethink how they lead through change during this time. So, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Michael. It's been a blast. Great to meet you.
And so, with that, this brings us to the end of this episode of Leading Minds Revealed. I'll see you on the next one.
Leading Minds Revealed podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights, join the conversation, and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.